Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Clay, and I am the Bucks believer. Today, we saw the Bucks pick up a massive victory over the Brooklyn Nets to even their series against Brooklyn at 2 games apiece. Today, in the first quarter, we saw the Bucks come out running great offense, but unfortunately, that came with limited success. There were plenty of pick-and-roll actions with Giannis Antetokounmpo as the screener, and it was also quite evident that the Bucks were making an effort to get Jrue Holiday involved in the offense early. These actions created lots of good looks for Milwaukee, but the Bucks failed to convert on them as they shot just 37.5% from the field in that first quarter. Fortunately, other than a few slight hiccups, the Bucks played great defense as well, so they entered the second quarter trailing by only 3 points despite their poor offensive shooting. In the second quarter, the Bucks got off to a terrible start. With Giannis on the bench, Milwaukee allowed a quick 10-0 run, forcing Coach Mike Budenholzer to call a timeout. At this timeout, Budenholzer subbed Giannis in for Brook Lopez as he ran out a small ball lineup with Giannis at the 5. This call immediately paid dividends as Milwaukee answered with their own run to take the lead. They scored 14 straight points to take a 37-36 advantage. Then disaster struck for the Nets. With 5 minutes and 52 seconds left in the second, Kyrie Irving landed awkwardly and injured his ankle. He did not return. The Bucks continued to play well, and they headed into halftime with a 5-point advantage. In the third quarter, Antetokounmpo took over the game. He scored 12 points, including 2 off of a monster alley-oop from Chris Middleton, as the Bucks built their lead up to 12 by the end of that quarter. The Nets never made it close in the fourth, and the Bucks came away with a second straight victory to tie this series at 2 games apiece. One of the biggest complaints from Bucks fans entering this game was the lack of ball handling responsibility given to their 2 best perimeter players in Chris Middleton and Jrue Holiday. In this game, that call was answered. Middleton had 8 assists and Holiday had 9 assists, as each of those players made multiple spectacular dishes to their teammates. Obviously, the standout for Middleton was his lob over the entirety of the Nets defense to Antetokounmpo, which was finished with an impressive jam, but Chris also made a lot of really solid passes out of the pick and roll. A couple of those came to Giannis on the roll, but he also made some dimes to his shooters on the perimeter. One that stood out to me was a play where he came around the pick from Giannis and saw a shooter on the opposite quarter. He made a one-handed baseball-style pass, thread the needle through Nets defenders, and found his teammate for a 3 that went in for the Bucks and continued to build up their momentum. Holiday also made some nice assists in this game as he finished with 9 of those. None of them were nearly as flashy as Middleton's, but Jrue continued to always make the right play, which has been a staple of his play with the Bucks so far this year, so it was good to see him continue to make nice passes and setting up his teammates to be successful. These 2 players also had some success scoring the ball. Middleton had a better game than Holiday as a scorer, as he finished with 19 points on 7 for 15 shooting and went 3 for 8 from beyond the arc as well. Chris made some really difficult shots, with the most impressive of those coming at the end of the third quarter, where Chris made an absolute dagger of a 3-pointer at the buzzer over 3 Nets defenders to give the Bucks a larger advantage. I believe that took the lead from 9 points to 12, and it had been upwards of 15 prior to a Nets run. So that shot gave the Bucks all the momentum that they needed in order to survive in the fourth quarter. Middleton also made some really difficult shots in the mid-range and was a consistent source of offense for the Bucks after he got off to a slow start. Holiday was a lot less inefficient than Chris, but he still had a solid game. Jrue chipped in 14 points on 6 for 16 shooting, and he had a ton of success whenever he tried to get in the paint. Jrue particularly was exploiting his matchup against Mike James, as the Nets' small guard was asked to take on a larger role in the absence of Kyrie Irving in the lineup. Jrue was able to exploit that matchup against James, and time again he put James in the post and tried to get himself in position for an easy layup. Jrue converted many of those, and that's a large reason why he was able to get up to 14 points. Unfortunately, he settled a little bit too much for my liking, as there were a couple pull-up jumpers in the mid-range that I wasn't a huge fan of, and he also settled for some 3-pointers that were not quite falling for him, as he was just 2 for 7 from beyond the arc. Those 2 makes were big shots for Jrue, as one was a step back and the other was a pull-up, but in general, I'd like to see him start to push towards the paint a little bit more, because he had so much success when getting into that action. A lot of those assists that those 2 players had came to the Bucks' star, the Greek freak Giannis Antetokounmpo. Giannis had a monster game for the Bucks, probably his best game of the series so far, as he had 34 points and 12 rebounds while shooting 13 for 21 on 2-pointers. Giannis was really dominant when he was able to get out in transition, as the Bucks did a great job of making some outlet passes. That was something that they didn't do too much in the first 3 games, so it was good for them to make that adjustment and try to get out on the fast break more often in this game. I think that created a lot of easy offense and is something that I look to see them continue to do as the series goes forward. A big reason for that was their aggressive defense, as they forced the Nets to turn the ball over 17 times. If they can keep putting that kind of pressure on the Nets ball handlers, it's going to create more transition success opportunities for Milwaukee, and that was a huge reason why Giannis had a great game. It was far from the only reason, though. He also ran a lot of screening actions where he was screening either Middleton or Holiday's man, and as we've seen throughout the season, that's one of the best plays that the Bucks have to offer. Each of Holiday and Middleton did a great job of finding Giannis on the roll, and that led to him scoring so efficiently on 2-point field goals. Unfortunately for Giannis, while I do think this was overall a great for him, there are some picks I'd like to nits I'd like to pick in this game for the Greek Freak. He shot just 1 for 5 from beyond the 3-point line, and the one make that he had was the very first one he attempted just 5 minutes into the contest. After that one make, it appeared that he had given himself some confidence, and multiple times early in the shot clock, he pulled up for 3-pointers. That's not a good shot for Giannis, and it's essentially a win for the defense every time he settles for that 3-point shot. Giannis shot just 30% from 3 in the regular season, and he's been even worse in this postseason. It's a shot that he needs to completely take out of his game. It appears that he will not be doing so in this postseason, so hopefully after this playoffs he can improve, but as long as this playoff run continues, it's going to be a big pain in the rear for the Bucks if Giannis continues to force up these 3-pointers. He also struggled to make his free throws, as he went just 5 for 10 from the line. This isn't something you can harp on too much because it's as simple as making a shot with no defender guarding you. Giannis has to do a better job on those free throws, and if he doesn't, I'm worried that we could see a hack-a-Giannis strategy from the Nets in the future, especially if the Bucks offense continues to run as smoothly as it did tonight. Giannis also had 5 turnovers, which has been an issue with him in this series, as he has 17 turnovers in 4 games. Averaging upwards of 4 turnovers per game is not a recipe for success from your best player, so Giannis needs to do a better job of taking care of the basketball. It's especially an issue when he only dishes out 3 assists, as he had a negative assist to turnover ratio, so ball control is going to be key for Giannis moving forward, and he needs to do a much better job of that. The big 3 players for the Bucks serving as their top 3 scorers came as no surprise, but the 4th guy who led them in scoring was a complete shocker. PJ Tucker stepped up his play on offense big time while continuing to be a key cog of the Bucks defense. PJ had 13 points and grabbed 7 rebounds in this game while shooting 5 for 8 from the field and making 3 of his 6 3-point attempts. Each of those 3-pointers came from the left corner in the first half of this game, as the Bucks did an excellent job of finding PJ in that corner. He was mostly defended by Kevin Durant in this game, and the Nets want Durant stationed around the basket, so he was mostly sagging off of Tucker and giving PJ lots of room to unload from 3-point range. That did not work for the Nets, as PJ made them pay 3 times on those 3-point attempts. Tucker also did a nice job of getting out in transition, as there was one play where Giannis Antetokounmpo found him with a sweet outlet pass and Tucker was able to finish at the basket, and there was another where PJ caught the ball in his corner, gave a little pump fake, took a dribble in, and shot a nice little floater. It's not a shot you see much from Tucker, but he got it to go, and that offensive production was sweet from PJ. He also did an excellent job of guarding Kevin Durant for the 2nd consecutive game. KD did have 28 points and grabbed 13 rebounds, but you can't only look at that when you consider how effective Durant was. He really struggled to be efficient shooting from the field, as he went only 9 for 25 from the field and 1 for 8 from the 3-point line. That is in no small part due to the defense that PJ played on him, and that has been key for the Bucks in each of the last 2 games. If they're going to continue to beat the Nets in this series, they're going to need Tucker to continue to defend Durant in the way that he has recently. He also forced KD to have 5 turnovers, which was really impressive because in general, I think of Durant as someone who does a nice job of taking care of the basketball. He's one of the most controlled players in the entire NBA. However, this is the second straight game where KD has had 5 turnovers, so that kind of constant pressure from PJ is visibly getting in his head. And there was one shot early in the fourth quarter where Durant rose up for a 3, and Tucker was right in his face. KD ended up airballing the shot, and he was visibly frustrated. Tucker has done an excellent job on Durant, and combine that with his offensive production in this game, and he is clearly the 4th most important player for the Bucks. Other than Tucker, there were many other Bucks who also stood out defensively. Chief among those was Pat Connaughton. Connaughton played 21 minutes in this game, which was by far the most in this series, and he certainly earned his worth. He provided a great spark for the Bucks off the bench and was particularly excellent on the defensive side of the court. He had 4 steals and blocked 2 shots in this game, and many of those steals were very key. He did an excellent job of using his skills and jumping into passing lanes by making key reads of where the Nets ball handlers were going to go with the basketball. Pat also made a really impressive block on Blake Griffin where he came over from the weak side, went straight up, and Blake could not finish over him. I think Griffin got the offensive rebound and made the layup afterward, but that block from Connaughton as a standalone play was pretty impressive. Pat also earned himself a battle scar as in a play in the second quarter. Pat went up for an offensive rebound, I believe it was, and Joe Harris whacked him right in the face. It ended up cutting Pat right above his eyeball, and he was bleeding quite a bit from that cut. So just so hardcore of a player Connaughton is, and it was really fun to watch him zip around the court for the Bucks. He also played fine offensively as he had 8 points and shot 2 for 5 from the 3-point line. If he's going to be on the court for extended minutes like I expect he will be for the rest of the series, he's going to need to provide some offensive value, so knocking down open jump shots is certainly a way for him to do so. In the end, his stellar play earned him a plus 23 plus minus in this game, which was second best on the Bucks outside of Antetokounmpo. Connaughton was wildly impressive, and I think he likely has earned himself even more playing time. The lineup of Holiday, Connaughton, Middleton, Tucker, and Antetokounmpo has to be one that Coach Mike Budenholzer uses more because it was used to great success in this game, with that second quarter 14-0 run being the key bullet point as proof in that case. This likely will mean less Brook Lopez, which is a bit of a shame because Brook is really valuable to what the Bucks are doing, especially on the defensive end of the court. In this game, he had 11 rebounds and came away with 3 steals as he used his length to really deflect a lot of passes and get in a lot of passing lanes to prevent the Nets from going where they wanted to go. However, the Bucks' small ball was devastating in this game, and I think it's probably their best lineup moving forward, both on the offensive end and on the defensive end. When people talk about this game, they will immediately point out Irving's injury. And they should. Irving's a great player, and he's a key cog in what the Nets want to do on the offensive end of the court. Unfortunately, what that injury is covering up is the great play that we saw from Milwaukee tonight. Milwaukee made important adjustments, and they did an excellent job of executing those adjustments. They also played harder than the Nets did, and they forced Brookline to turn the ball over 18 times. I think I said it was 17 earlier in the video, so I apologize. There's my correction right there. Game 3 could be looked at as a fluky win for the Bucks, but Game 4 was an absolute statement victory for Milwaukee. They're now 2 wins away from the conference finals, and they have all of the momentum as the series swings back to Brooklyn. The status of Irving and Harden remains to be seen, and that obviously will be a key player in who wins this series, but you have to feel good about the Bucks' chances regardless of the health of those two. Let me know what you thought of this video and this game as a whole in the comments section down below. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe, especially if you are a fellow Bucks believer. This is the place for you. I think that I've covered everything that I wanted to cover, so that's going to be it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, I will see you all again